Hey, good morning, Martin. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? I'm good.
Doing well. Yeah. So thanks for joining in for this episode of AI driven financial forecasting. So I do want to jump right in. I got some good questions. So just kind of aligning to the introduction of AI in financial forecasting. Can you briefly explain how AI is currently being integrated into financial forecasting within project management? And if there are any challenges, any aha moments, do you mind just sharing those as well?
Usually, budgeting and forecasting is like a static document. You
Mhm.
get an Excel sheet as a baseline and it's static, it does not move. So think of AI. By adding AI, it becomes a dynamic tool and a conversational tool. So essentially, if you feed it market data, plus if you feed it historical project data, now you get a forecast that's more accurate. So think of it, let's say if you're asked to build a project cost for a new construction, but you've built,
Mhm.
you know, either you've built a similar construction before, similar square footage, and then now you add that to the market cost for steel, concrete, and stuff, right? So now when you're asking for how much are you gonna spend for this in the next 6 months, because now right now you're asking for approval, you can now have a little bit of more accurate forecast because now you have historical data plus, and then you can talk to it in a sense where um you're adding all your risks and stuff, so you could
Mhm.
put contingencies there as well. So I think that's kind of the main advantage of it, instead of just finger in the air estimate and then you just put a plus minus 30% contingency, which is the norm. So you get a lot of really bloated project budget at the beginning, which
Mhm.
is harder to get approved. But now if you have market data, historical data, you're closer maybe to plus minus 15%. So you don't have, you get more approval faster that way.
Yeah. Are there any AI specific tools that you've used for financial forecasting?
Uh, well, I'm assuming most of the enterprises would have their own version of it, but really it doesn't have to be that complicated. I would say even if you have your trustworthy Excel and
Yes.
use it with ChatGPT, you put in all could say ChatGPT, here's like my initial budget. What am I missing? Oh, you're
Mhm.
missing this, because sometimes when you're doing budgeting for projects, you hit on the big things, but you miss on the small things. So you forget that there's sometimes, even for me before, I forget that there is customs charges, there's forex fluctuations, and that you don't really account for. I've been hinted with one of those in the Philippines before. There was forex jump from USD. Let's say USD was 40 pesos per $1. It became like 48 in like 2 weeks. So when we were paying customs duties, it is not based on when we did the budget, it was at 40, but when we
Mhm.
were actually paying it, it's 48. So that's like a big jump there. We didn't do contingencies there. So with AI this time, you could actually predict, not predict, but more account for, hey, how much contingency should I use for forex? How much,
Yeah.
like, what did I miss before? And you could do that in every single thing. Like in this project last year, I missed this, incorporate that into this year's budget, so on and so
But
forth. So
that's a good
as
point too.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Like,
as
what
yeah,
about prediction too? Like, I just
yeah,
want to let you finish your point, but that's a good point on predictions, like using the historical information to perhaps put a
yeah.
prediction
So
model in place, right?
here's the last third. I'm overrun last year on steel because hey, we estimated X number quantity for 10,000 square foot, but
Hmm.
now we're building a 15,000 square foot. What's the estimate for that? So imagine
Oh,
if you're
yeah.
like a contractor, or even for AV, let's say for IT, you could assume costs for AV. Now you could plug in, you could get data from different websites and say, hey, a TV costs this much now. In the next 6 months, what could it cost? Then you can add your market data there, and it should give you a better estimate with even products that you want to just to select.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever used it for, I always bring up accruals and everything for me, like when we have a fixed fee or deliverable based statement of work with some of our vendors. and we map out those deliverables based on timeline. And if timeline is delayed, we may have anticipated a certain cost for a certain month, and maybe there is a delay and that cost slips into another month. So from an accounting perspective, we have to hold, right? We have
Yeah.
to kind of move that cost. Have you ever seen those? Like, how
Yeah,
do you
and
account for
that's always
those?
a challenge, right? It's like a
Yeah,
project that lasts over 6 months. You're kind of asked to predict your spending because they kind of hold the money for you, and if you don't spend it, then it affects next month and whatnot, right? So I think challenge for the PMs that way is really identifying, forecasting when you're spending it, rather than just,
yeah,
hey, from point A to point B, I'm gonna spend 10 million. But they're really asking you, how much are you spending from month one to month two to month three to month four.
correct.
So in the same way, I think, if you use AI, if you have your schedule, hey, help me predict when I'm spending this. And I wouldn't. So I think one of the pitfalls would be taking the answer from AI as 100% true. Obviously, that it should
Yeah,
guide you, but it's not supposed to replace your decision making. It's more giving you um, guardrails on, okay, think about this maybe for week one, and then you make your decision based on the information. And then maybe
hmm,
if it's unclear, you ask more questions. Okay, until you're confident enough. Okay, that makes sense. That's
yeah.
once month one. That's month two. That's month three.
Spot on. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's great. Um, how does AI ensure that projects remain within their financial constraints? Is that something that we can kind of consider, especially the variance? Make sure we don't go over. A lot of times, if we have huge contingency within the project, our leadership pulls that contingency. But do you have any recommendations on how we can
Yeah.
utilize? Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say you start with because really AI, the best use of AI is just putting constraints. Like if you have trillions of data, the whole point of prompt engineering and asking the right questions is to box in the right information so that you get the right information out, right? So it's more, so constraints are actually great. Like, oh, wait, I can only spend up to this much. I can't have more than this on this. We're not willing to spend on this much on this thing, right? So having your constraints there also focuses your choices in terms of what technology should I use, what are non-negotiable. So if you feed all those information, it should help you, and it should tell you, hey, based on your preferences and non-negotiables, this budget does not work. Then you can go
Yeah,
back
that's
to
it.
your stakeholders and say, hey, if you want a BMW, you got to pay BMW price, not a Honda price, kind of
Yes, that's
thing,
it.
right? So because I've got those before, like, hey, you were building a factory then, and the challenge was to build it under 15 million, 15 million euros. So we were working under that assumption. We built it, you know, it was basically a shoebox. Like
Hmm.
it's a shoebox, literally. So when it's a shoebox, obviously it's not pretty, but it's very functional, right? So at that time, we were our stakeholders were, they sent maybe managers, senior managers in the meetings, and they're approving all these, the look, the feel, and they're also looking at only the technical part of it, like is it functional? Are we
Hmm.
producing as much? Blah blah blah. But when we presented it to like the sourcing unit country manager, said, "Oh, it looks like a shoebox." I said, "Yeah, that's kind of what you get for 15 million. If you want like a world class facility, you're gonna need to spend world class facility money." We had to go through a redesign, and ended up spending another, I'd say 600,000 on design, because we had to, redesign plus re get estimates and then re-engineer. So we spent another 600K there, and then budget ballooned from 15 to I think 27 million in the end. If we had AI, then I would say, it would have been not easier, but at least it would have been less challenging, because
Yeah,
you would have been able to call these out early.
yeah, that's a good point. So just the initial estimates, right? Maybe honing in on the requirements and mapping the estimates to those to understand, maybe what the business or, that partner really, really wanted. So
Yeah, and really,
spot
it's like
on.
asking the right questions. Like, because sometimes they know what they want, but they, when you can only, if you have an hour to talk about a 20 million build, you don't really get to ask all the, the questions that you need to be
That's
answered.
correct.
But if you have AI to guide you and say, okay, what are non-negotiables? Hey, I want the floor this, I want a viewing lounge, I want a great lobby, whatever, right? Like these are my non-negotiables, and then the rest could be done. So before there was their only piece then was like, hey, I want a 15 million factory. That's it.
That's
So
it.
we kind of like, so okay, so for us, okay, the non-negotiable would be production should be as predicted because it's the one that's paying, but everything else, it's like it's a square box. It's like really a shoebox. That's it. We're not
Mhm.
building anything fancy. We're not building, you know, before there was no requirement for lead, but apparently it became a thing. We have to be, so any new build. So I think Unilever at that time wasn't. I think they wanted to have any new builds would have to be lead silver. So that came like last minute. We already got it approved, and then we had to redesign for lead. Right. So like all these things come so kind of hard. So we're always reactive, but I think with AI you can be proactive in a sense
That's
because
it.
now you can predict all those stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, for project managers who are new to AI, what do you think is the first step in incorporating AI into financial forecasting for their projects? I know we spoke about perhaps on the estimation piece, but do you have any recommendations for the PMs that are new and how they can use AI for financial forecast? Because we know that this can become very complex, right? So,
I mean, it's really starting small. It doesn't have to be like the big project right away. Like even if you're small, the small project that you have always starts with budget versus it actually always budget versus actual, right? You're
mhm,
being asked for an estimate for a project. Here's your scope. So sometimes you're going with industry knowledge,
correct.
industry knowledge for it, right? So what happens? What would happen better would be like you can look at, hopefully if you're in an organization that has historical data, should be able to
Hmm.
get them. But if not, you can
Hmm.
start small. Hey, here's the project. Here's the scope. I'm tasked with estimating. Before going into detailed estimates, like give me categories like foundation. Let's say I'm always going to construction because it's the hardest to estimate. But like say foundation, build, paint, floor, and give me and then ask me clarifying questions. Like and then it would because sometimes if you give like a rough estimate of what you're trying to do, it gives you a generic answer. But if you put that line, ask me clarification question so you could get this right, it would ask you how big are we building? What material, what's the weather like? What's like blah blah blah. Is there do you need are you ordering something imported? Where is it coming from? So it kind of calculates all the duties and taxes, the shipping costs and all that into one big thing. So now you have a base. So that base
Yeah.
you need to get signed off on. So right now, before you submit that to finance, hey, you talk to procurement, you talk to the vendor, you get confirmation for those things before you submit. So
That's
now
right.
now when you get it right, like first project to have, you'll probably get it, I don't know, plus minus 35%. Then you use that data for your next project. Could go down
Yep.
from 35 to 30, 30 to 25, 25 to. Then you'll have a database of good data, then you can start using that model for future estimates. And then you could share that with the rest of, if your other counter, because if you're PM, there are probably other PMs having the same problem. So if you guys pull in all your information and use the same model, it gets smarter faster. That's the whole point of machine learning, right? It
Yeah.
learns as you put data, but obviously has to have good data. So if it's backed up by POs, purchase orders, invoices, is even better. Because estimate is one thing, but if it's actually a contract that you signed, let's say a build is 5 million for contractor A, and here are the equipment, here are the material breakdown of materials. That's an actual cost that you're basing a future estimate on. So now it's like closer to actual. So that's kind of
Yeah.
the point.
Thank you for touching on that predictive analysis and the machine learning aspect as well. I think it's helpful, especially, we know how complex financial forecasting is. So I think that's a huge, huge point to call out as well.
Yeah.
So what ROI have you seen in projects that adopted AI for financial management? And how do you measure success in those cases?
For me, really, it shows up in time saved and better accuracy. Because I think
Mm-hmm.
um, if you're overrun, you're gonna have to either ask for more money, which takes a lot of justification and what happened, why didn't we think of it before, and then a lot of it depends on the size of the company, but it would mean justifying that extra cost. What this what impact does it have to the business case? But I think you had if you were using AI, you would be able to predict and flag it as a risk. Hey, if we do that change, hey, if we really go for lead, you can't keep it at 27 or at 23. It's going to go up to 27 because now we have to, use this kind of windows that's double
Mm-hmm.
tinted, that's this thick. Now that cost is this much, right?
Yeah.
And that's just material cost, installation cost would be this much, rework of engineering is this much, so on and so forth. So what happens to most projects is that, oh, they say yes to that, thinking that it's only the cost of the windows, but really the re-engineering is missed, the rework is missed, and then the time it takes to order, to ship, to prepare is not captured. So I think with AI, it's really the ROI shows up in time save, because now if you get that change, quickly put it in. You say, hey, here's a change that's being requested. So what's the impact? Not just to
Mm-hmm.
time, but to schedule and to cost. Now you can communicate. Okay, we can do that, but it's this, right? So if that's clear, then there's no pre-approval needed. Because now they kind of use that to pre-approve rather than to ask for approval at the
That's
end.
right.
Yeah, and then
That's right.
there would be less time spent on manual reporting. So essentially, if your data is connected to not just AI, but let's say Power BI, you get now real time data reporting. You can automate reporting in a sense, like stakeholders can go into that report and say how much you've spent already, what's the metrics that's being missed, and then you use that as well. So for myself, I use the Power BI a lot to use not just updates, but like to tell the story on where we are, why we're
Mm-hmm.
overrun or why we're lagging behind, build some clarity on where we're going next, what happens next in the project. So really,
Yeah.
in part of your question, success metrics is really our saves and reporting, smaller gaps between forecast and actual, and then
Mm-hmm.
really faster, cleaner financial decisions by leadership, because now they have that right metrics to make a decision on. Like if you want
Yeah.
that feature, it costs this much, it delays for 2 months. Yes or no? If it's yes, great, we move ahead. Right?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, oh, I don't know, it will probably take me about 3 months, 3 more months. But now if you have backing on why it's gonna be 3 months, it's easier to
That's right.
justify. Yeah,
That's
so
right. That's
ROI
right.
isn't really ROI isn't really on dollars, it's really control and confidence in managing the finances and schedule.
Yeah, me too. I think that's spot on. I'm so happy to have AI. I know I used to take stabs in the dark, so now we actually have that real data, and so it's
Yeah,
just amazing to
that's
see.
why I think the term finger in the air estimate is kind of like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
came from
Right,
the
right.
PM, kind of thinking, oh, how much to have that? Oh, I think it's about this, right? So sometimes before it comes with experience, like I built,
Right.
it gets better. The finger in the air estimate gets better as you get more, time in and get more projects in under your belt. But that's nothing compared to like actual data, like
That's right.
historical data plus market data, and even add your experience, right? Like market
Yes,
data, historical data, add your experience in, and then give me an estimate. Then that's really even better.
that's good. Thanks, Martin. I appreciate that. So,
Yeah,
how do you use or see AI transforming the landscape of project financial management in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it would be. So if like I would say I would if I'm a PM today or a junior, starting PM, I would use AI as like a junior analyst, like have it do heavy crunch the heavy crunching. Like you don't really have to
Mhm.
do the Excel formulas anymore. You don't have to do the visualization, because that can be done automatically through AI. Here's my data, here's my raw data. Doesn't have to
Mhm.
be organized properly. Here's my raw data. what am I missing? What's the trend? Like, how much are we spending? How am I projecting towards, actual versus budget? You can actually talk to your data today, right? That before, like your raw data, you have to translate that into a visual. Then now you have to do analysis after, right? Before you get to
Correct.
analysis, you've taken maybe a week. And now by the end of that week, there's new data that has come in. So you never get to the analysis part. So what's
Correct.
good now is that like once you get your data in, it just adds to the database, and then CD your reports are getting updated automatically. And then even the visuals, even the charts, not that you don't want to think about it, you could take a snapshot of it, ask, hey, what am I missing? Or help me create like a high level update for this specific, chart that I can give stakeholders to so that they can make more decisions faster, whatnot. So I think that's kind of where it's gonna go, or where it
Okay.
is already. I think if we're not there already.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Um, so, do you have any some best practice? Could you what are some best practices for using AI in financial forecasting that you've learned through experience? So, I know we touched on just kind of utilization and just your experience allows you to kind of determine what that looks like. But any best practices for newer PMs or even our advanced PMs or PMO directors that you can kind of showcase that may be helpful for the audience?
Yeah, I would really start with clean, structured data. I think
Mm-hmm.
anything
That's
data
key.
using AI is really about having clear data. Like so, garbage in, garbage out, right? So I think assume I would put a lot of effort in making sure that I have clean data. So
Mm-hmm.
what does that mean? So it's getting if you're working on a database, you get your invoices, what categorize them properly. Okay, this one is for construction, this one's for technology, this one's for furniture, this one's for painting, this one's as you categorize them properly, then once you pull that from that data, hey, I need cost for painting or for renovating a 1,200 square foot washroom for a
Mm-hmm.
mall. So
Mm-hmm.
before you would say, oh, that's around maybe 15,000, right? But if you categorize your data in a way, okay, fixtures for washroom is this, you categorize, okay, fixtures is this much, paint is this much, tiles are this much. Then once you start pulling with AI, then you get a better accuracy that way. So I would start with clean, structured data, and
Mm-hmm.
then really use AI not for getting answers, but for clarity. To
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
it's not a one-stop shop where, hey, give me an estimate. It's more, okay, that's kind of, and then you start asking more questions. You don't take the output as is. It's more under applying your experience into the output and really combining AI plus expertise. That's kind
Yeah.
of where your sweet spot would be. And you just
Okay.
build trust gradually. You start small, then you scale after you've gotten through, like you've established that the model works. You don't go, from today zero training. You don't go estimating for a full factory. You go a room, right?
Mm-hmm. That's
Or maybe
right.
you go and then get something bigger, so on and so forth. Or maybe if you're into IT, then what's for 15 users before you go to 500 users, right? So I
Correct.
think that's kind of where. So yeah, so I would say common pitfalls would be expecting AI to be perfect day one. Oh,
Correct.
I'm
And
not
to
get
train.
so you use it, it's wrong. I'm never gonna use it again. Kind of the whole
Correct.
point of it is you build on top of everything so it learns, and then you can trust it more and more as you use it. You know,
Yeah.
so and expecting automating too much too fast. So kind
Correct.
of so if you start automating everything right away, and then you become like, oh, you're that's just AI. And then right now AI has like, oh, there's like a um negative connotation. It's like, oh, if AI wrote that, I don't trust it, right? Like, because that
Yeah.
a human didn't write it. But I think at some point, you know, it will definitely be everywhere. Like even the news you see right now probably generated, right? Y- so I would say at some point, go slow, so that you could build trust and you could say, okay, AI helped me with the heavy lifting, but the thought process, the storytelling, the clarity came from me, so that it kind of builds trust that way, so that the ways of working is adjusted in terms of AI being accepted as a culture using it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I
then
think
really
that's excellent. Yeah.
lastly is relying on AI without understanding the assumptions behind it. Like taking what it's spouting out as true. It's kind of hard. So really assumptions need to come from you so that you know the context behind before an output comes. So when you're asking for anything really, here are my key thoughts, A, B, and C, right? Then ask me again. I always use that term. Ask me clarifying questions if you need more help, better context, or to better answer this. And then it would ask you questions, so the output would always be better.
So how do you know when you reach the end? So I keep asking clarifying
So
questions.
what happens is what when you try that, it would ask you about 5, 10, 15 questions. So as you answer 15, it would say, okay, I have enough. You would say
Oh,
it would say
perfect.
it would say,
Yeah.
I would have enough. Here's my thoughts. And then you read it. Okay. Actually and then when you read it, oh, this part is wrong because this part, I don't really agree. So really you treat it as a not sparring partner, but a sounding board rather than a tool just to give you answers. It's like, you're really having
Yeah.
a conversation and say, okay, actually, I don't agree with that, but don't agree with me just because. You can say that and then tell me why that's right, so that you can understand the context on why it's saying that, right? So what's the concept behind that? Because in my experience, that's not true, but maybe I'm missing something, right? So it's more a conversation with an expert rather than a teach me how to do it and then grab everything that you say to be true kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it really
Yeah.
augments and not replaces us. It sharpens your view, but still steering you to the right financial decisions.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Martin. I appreciate it. This concludes our episode. So, again,
Awesome.
thank you so much. I look forward to future episodes and I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.